Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge & Company. The nonprofit OATS, formerly known as Older Adults Technology Services, teaches those of us who came of older age before the internet explosion how to use technology to enhance our lives. Tom Kamber is both its founder and executive director, and he's my guest today, and welcome.
Thank you.
What it seems to me is that you took what we can refer to as the longevity revolution and combined it with the technology revolution. Is that good?
That's exactly how we think about it,
Yeah.
in fact. We were really I started working with older adults back in 2004, and was...
How? Where?
Well, it began with a simple phone call. It was one of those life-changing moments, literally. I was at work, I remember it happening. I was working for a different nonprofit, and we were launching a website for Lower Manhattan after 9/11. And a woman called me, an 87-year-old woman named Pearl Schur, called and said, I want to go to this party, but I don't know anything about the internet, and I'm not sure I should come. And I said, oh, well, come to the party and find me, and I'll tell you whatever you need to know.
Yeah.
And I didn't really quite understand what I was getting into, you know, and she showed up, and one thing led to another. She started coming to my office every morning at 8 a.m.
She was how old? 80?
Every Monday at 8 a.m. She was 87. And for a year, we did those weekly visits. And they started at my office, and then they moved over to the Hallmark in Lower Manhattan.
Oh, that's where she
lived.
The residence for older adults.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it became so, I learned so much about teaching the technology to Pearl. Our first day, I asked her to move the mouse up on the screen, and she picked the mouse up and picked it up off the table.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, okay, that's not what I was expecting. And so then we started working on how to use the mouse for a while. And but she joined Community Board 1. She helped get a bus shelter in front of the Hallmark. She was really active in downtown civic engagement. And it really opened up her life. And it opened up my thinking about what it meant to get older in New York and what was possible when a person went online. So when I was looking for something to do, I thought, here's the twin revolutions, right? There's the aging, the longevity period where people are getting older. And Pearl was such an active senior. She lived for several more years and was folk dancing and helping other people start nonprofits and just doing amazing things. And at the same time, I'm from the internet age, and I grew up, you know, I watched the internet happen during and after college and became aware of what the power of it could be. And so thought, what a perfect thing for me to work on. And I started OATS in 2004.
So then you wrote a proposal.
Yeah.
And then you got funding for it?
I did, although the first year was really tough. It was, I had this vision that, oh, I'm a social entrepreneur, and I've been working in nonprofits for 15 years in New York, and everybody's going to come and write me checks.
Yeah, right.
And so I started OATS, and we incorporated, and I started sending out fundraising proposals, and they started coming back rejected.
Oh.
And I was so confident that it would work that I didn't have another job, and I was just trying to survive this way.
With a family.
And with a family, and I was we had at that time we still have 2 daughters, and my wife was saying, okay, well, take some time to try to get this going, and for 6 months we raised only about $3,000, and then just at the end of the year. You know, she said, okay, that's kind of it. You really need to start looking for work that pays. And JP Chase actually was our first real funder. They came in with a decent-sized grant that kept us growing and developing programs. And then we started getting support from foundations and from the city council discretionary money, and that got us going.
And so what you did was you framed a program, and then you put it into different senior sentences? What did you do?
The first step, one of the things that I had learned prior to that is when you build projects, the most important thing to do is really, really, really try to inhabit the perspective of the person you're trying to serve. And so because I worked with Pearl so much, and I had worked in housing, working with tenants associations, which were almost all older adults that run them in New York City, I had this understanding of what people needed to be able to learn. And I knew what we needed was small groups, in a sort of a lab-based environment. We needed at least 10 weeks or so to get somebody over the basic threshold for knowing what they were doing. And I had all these relationships with housing organizations. So the Dr. Betty Shabazz Center. And they had a computer lab, all run by older adult women that ran the housing development. And I went in and said, would you folks like to learn how to use the computers? Because the seniors, the kids came in after school, but the seniors never used them. And so our first program was there. And that was when they got co-sponsored by another local group. And then the Shabazz complex actually started paying for the class with the Tenants Association resources because it was so valuable to them. But that class became the first OATS basic course. And I used a lot of different material and support from others that had expertise. I interviewed dozens of senior center directors. And then from there we went to, we actually started with a lot of different social service organizations at first, and then slowly became more ingrained with the Department for the Aging centers that provide basic senior services. We've taught at 70 locations since
7-0.
70, yeah, since 2004 now.
That's amazing. And now you've got a big center that you've opened.
Yeah.
In sort of Midtown Manhattan on West 25th Street.
That's
so
right.
Tell us about it.
Well, the center is kind of the culmination of all of that work. If you think of that phone call with Pearl as having this sort of seed of being able to do something really meaningful, all the training that we did for the first 5 years or so, it was very meaningful for people, but we were frustrated by it because at the end of the day, a person would take 10 weeks worth of classes and then they would be sort of absorbed back into the local partner site. And we never had our own lab.
So
we never had our own.
Yeah, you could never pull it together or see.
We couldn't do anything with people after they graduated. They could come and take another class.
Yeah.
But we felt like we were that gap, that time that we were missing the people meant that we couldn't make it a community. We could only make it a service. And we were animated. We did a strategic plan with the board, and everybody recognized that we're not about technology, we're about aging. And what we're really interested in is changing the way we age. The longevity revolution we're just at the very first step of a completely new way of living. And it's incredibly exciting, and we really want to help shape that. And we can't help shape that by just saying goodbye to people at the end of their 10-week basic class and then signing up a new cohort and kind of churning that way. So when the stimulus package happened in 2010, the federal stimulus, there was broadband technology money called Broadband Technology Opportunities Program. And
what does broadband mean, basically?
Sure. Broadband is high-speed internet. So if you remember originally, there was dial-up, where you would put your phone on, get the phone modem, and it would squeak at you. That was painfully slow, and eventually they got faster services. And so it really, if you think of it as a pipeline, the size of the pipeline has been increasing. And today, they have gigabit speed pipelines with fiber optic cables that go right to your home.
Yeah, so you can just go in by yourself.
That's broadband is anything that's considered the high speed, and it's sort of a moving target. But if you have a cable modem or even any of the fiber optic versions or fast DSL lines, those are considered broadband by most people.
So interesting, because in my mind, as I get older, and you sort of forget things and you have to think for a while and then it comes up, I always think it's like booting up an old computer that takes a long time to boot up. That's my head. Yeah. And it is.
It does. It takes a little while to get up and going anyway. So you're clicking on the connection and it's figuring itself out, and then it says, okay, now you're connected. Right. There's always this little waiting game. And
so anyway, the money was available.
So we were able to there was money becoming available, and our strategy said we wanted to rethink our program so that it was more about impact areas. We wanted to work on social engagement, health, financial security, advocacy, and learning.
So now that you've taught people the technology, what are you going to do with it?
Exactly. So we needed a center for that. And so we went to Department for the Aging and we said, well, what if we took a federal grant through the stimulus package, the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program, and we built a new center. We upgraded labs all over the city. We increased and improved our curriculum, and we launched an online site that people could use also as a way of getting access to information on through the internet. And Department for the Aging, to their credit, said, this sounds great, packaged that together, applied for the resources with the Department of Information Technology. They got the grant, and in a kind of, I couldn't imagine a more ideal public-private partnership than this one. They sat down with us, they said, this was your plan, execute it. Here's the money. We're just going to take enough to do a little bit of administration, and OATS is going to be able to really realize your strategic vision. And they worked with us as partners, and 3 years later, we launched the Exploration Center, which is the only technology-themed community center for older adults in the entire country. We built 20.
It's a walk-in.
It's a walk-in center.
It's a storefront, a very large
It's a
Front.
2,700 square foot storefront with full floor-to-ceiling plate glass windows all the way across, lots of light and air. We had the architect who used to work for Richard Meyer design the space, so it's awesome. It's got all this teak wood paneling everywhere, and we were able to save a lot of money because we didn't have as many bureaucratic tangles. The city really supported our strategy, and we built out this fantastic space. And I mean, it is, for older adults who walk in there, they often literally look at you when they walk in the door and say, wow, you know, this is just great. I really feel so comfortable here. So we were able to do something that wasn't just another center with a computer lab in it, but really was almost a mecca for people that were looking to use technology to really change their lives. And that launched in February. We completed the rest of the program with the build out of the labs and the Senior Planet site. All was done within the time period. And that project all is just ending right now, and we're starting to look at our future.
So you teach there also?
Yep.
You have classes?
That's right.
And a lot of demand for the classes.
A huge demand for the classes.
I heard that there were lines out on the street.
There were lines last 2 weeks ago. We opened our class enrollment up, and it was like a rock concert. I've never seen it. Literally, I got a call from the director of the center at about 5 to 9, and she said, we have a line down the street of 200 people waiting to sign up for classes, and the enrollment didn't start until 10 a.m. People were already in line at 7:30 to get their preference in classes, which is just a kind of excitement and an energy that I think says a lot about what the demand is, and also the kind of experience people are having. We don't really market almost at all for it. We haven't been taking ads out. People, it's almost all word of mouth.
And people can come in, they can sit there if they want to, just sit there, right?
Yes, of course.
Nobody's going to bother them.
Yep.
But there are computers to use. Do they have to sign up for those if it's not a class hour?
They don't really need to sign up. They do need, what we ask, there's only a couple of rules at the center. One is respect the space and the other people in it, which really involves just the standard common sense things that you'd expect. And the other rule that we have, actually 3 rules. The second rule is you have to be 60 or older. And we have people coming in and saying, I'm 60, and we're looking at them saying, you're not 60. People want to be older so they can get in. And the third rule is be there with a purpose. Be there to use the technology in some way. And we do have computers that are open access machines, so people can come in. We do ask that you sign up for a free membership so we know who you are, where you're coming from, and ask you some questions about what you're trying to do so we can help you. And we have volunteers that are available to work with you on any question you might have.
Fabulous.
It can be helping you with your cell phone. People come in with Kindles and Nooks and e-readers, digital cameras.
How do I use this?
And how do I use it? Or just sitting down on the computer and saying, I want to make my resume into a PDF, but I don't know how to do that. Can you show me? And so people sign up for that. But we had a gentleman in there writing a book. He just finished his book. We have a woman in there who does e-commerce on one of the computers, not buying, but selling. She runs her own handbag business, and she sells on Etsy, and she works on the site right there in the center. It's really the gamut.
And the address is?
Oh, it's 127 West 25th Street.
Okay, so now let's go on to...
and it's called the Senior Planet Exploration Center, just there between 6th and 7th Avenue.
And you have a website called seniorplanet.org.
Yes.
And the website is a newsy website, right? I mean,
it is.
It's got news, it's got issues that you're interested in, it tells you different information, and you get a good audience on that.
Oh yeah, we have tens of thousands of people every month coming to that website. What's happening there is, for older adults, when you go on the internet, it's bewildering often. And as people start clicking around on sites, a lot of people are trying to sell at you, or they're packaging things for kind of corporate interests in different ways. And people feel like they don't have a site where they can just go on and read about things of interest to older people in a relaxing and a sort of free way. And also sometimes they feel talked down to. A lot of the messages that seniors get on the internet are kind of have creeping ageism in them, or stereotypes that are obnoxious. And so when we launched Senior Planet, the tagline that we created after talking to a lot of people was aging with attitude. Because that's what people are doing now. And that's kind of really what started for me with Pearl. I remember one day saying to her, oh, you're going to folk dancing now. I said, you're so active, And she was probably almost 90 at that point. And she said, she grabbed me by the arm and she looked me in the eyes. And she said, Tom, the years since I turned 65, more 70, since 70, been the best years of my life. I never would have danced before because I didn't feel good about my body, but now I feel great about myself. And I thought, oh, you know, she's aging with attitude. It's a sense of feeling free and optimistic about your future, and that you can really pursue your interests and your goals. And so seniorplanet.org is a website where we post content that is of interest to older adults around a whole lifestyle of aging. It can be around health, or it can be fashion, it could be science or technology, government, public policy issues, anything that people are interested in that tends to be relevant to older readers. We post new content every single day. We have a team of people working on the site. We hire people to write our own content, and that gets syndicated to other sites like Next Avenue that PBS runs. They use some of our content. And then we do a citywide events calendar, and people can sign up for that on email right on seniorplanet.org, and it will come to you each day or each week with new events that we pick that are sort of senior friendly or have cool discounts or just seem like great things to do in the city.
So what do we call older adults?
I say 60 plus.
60 plus.
To me, that's where, at least from a technology standpoint, and also I think to some sense of a personal sort of acknowledgement point of view, I think a lot of people when they hit the age of 60 realize that they're in that sort of older phase of their lives.
Right, they're at the next to the last or the last box when they age.
Yeah, I remember
instead of going down, you want it to go up.
Somebody said once, I cannot remember who this was, but he said that he was a dog enthusiast, and he had always had a dog, and when he hit 60, his dog passed away, and he went out and got a new dog. And he thought about it, and he thought, you know what? I think I'm on my next to last dog. And it was just such an interesting way to think about it. But there's just, as we get to that age, we start realizing like we're in a later period in our life. And it changes how people think about their missions in life, the kinds of projects they want to work on. And really, as so many seniors are, when you don't use technology, it feels like you want to help build some skills to overcome some of the barriers to making progress.
And in this age, first, loneliness is a big problem with a lot of older adults.
Yeah.
And you get so isolated if you can't take advantage of all of these things that can open the world to you.
That's right.
I mean, I look for houses in Italy and traveling to all these places that I most likely will never get to, but anyway, I like to enjoy it. Yeah. You're an agent for change, is that what we call you?
Sure.
Were you trained as that? You're a professor at college. I mean, what's your doctorate in?
Well, I was
training?
Trained right here at CUNY. I have a PhD from the Graduate Center in public policy. And originally, I was a housing activist when I got out of college. So, I mean, I've been an activist since I was 15 years old.
So you were born an activist?
I was born an activist.
Were your parents activists?
They were fairly active. I mean, my dad was a university professor. My mom was in sales, but my mother, for example, was one of the pioneering photographers where in the 1960s, we lived in Maine, and there were the mental institutions that were almost criminally negligent with their patients. She managed to get access to one of them and take a series of photographs for the Maine Times that was part of the opening up of the dialogue around institutionalization and mental illness in America.
You grew up in a
I grew up around, my parents were very thoughtful about social change and social issues. When I was 15 years old, I was canvassing for environmental issues. And then when I came to New York, went to Columbia, and got interested in homeless and housing policy and did that for about 10 years. So my dissertation, which is at CUNY here right on the shelves here, is on housing policy. And when I finished that, I realized that housing is a very developed field. It's already so many of the programs have been running for years, so it's very effective to work on, but it's not as much a field for innovation as something like what I'm working on right now, where it's, aging is just chock full of opportunities and new things happening. And so it's much more exciting for me when you think about the contrast. New York City has already been built out. So it's very hard to build new low-income housing buildings in New York City. They're still doing it, but it's very challenging. But when you think about solving how to get older Americans to connect to the health exchanges online right now, which is a big hot-button topic, millions of people are having to deal with that right now, and they need computers to do it. And half of people over the age of 60 are not using computers.
Half of them.
Yeah, it's 46% of people, actually over 65 is the correct number, are not online. So
is that because they don't have a computer or they don't know where to go to learn it, because they're available. The use of a computer is available to you. You can go to a library or to the senior centers or to you.
Yeah, there's that's a very complex question in a way. What's going on for older people? It's not a new phenomenon. I went back and did some research, and it turns out that back into the 1960s and early 70s, people were wringing their hands around how to get older adults to use call waiting systems that were emerging. ATMs were a challenge in the 80s in New York. Older adults have historically adopted technology at lower rates. They're always have historically been on the far end of the adoption curve. They come in last. And when it's something like email or internet or Facebook or electronic health record software, these are life-changing things, and you need them to be able to be part of the mainstream. So 20% of older adults are socially isolated, according to the AARP Foundation.
Is that usually the older?
Yeah, it gets even more serious as you get into your 80s. And so there is that dynamic as people age. And the technology is so critical for people to be able to reconnect, and yet almost half of older adults, when they interview them, say that they've never been online. And when they ask why, they say several things. One is the social networks that older adults are part of don't reinforce technology adoption. So when you're 60 or 70 or 80, your friendship network tends to be in your age group, and they're slower adopters. So it's a self-reinforcing pattern, because the person you're sitting next to at a dinner or a cocktail party or on the couch is probably not taking out their new iPhone 5S and talking about it.
So we want more intergenerational exchanges.
You need to rebuild the social connections. And so one of it is intergenerational. One method of doing that is we've been working with intergenerational projects since our first site in Bedford-Stuyvesant. But also, you can create those networks just with older adults in a supportive and creative environment, which is what's going on at the Senior Planet Center. We have intergenerational programs there, but we've got seniors that are working with other seniors in these iPad classes. We have a project with the AARP Foundation right now where they're giving people iPads. We're training other primarily older adults to train the seniors how to use the iPads, and they're getting 6 months worth of classes to then all focused on overcoming isolation. We're picking people who are lonely or have frayed social networks, and we're rebuilding those networks over 6 months. And it's actually working, and it's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. It's built on the curriculum that we have at the center.
So are you in NORCs, the naturally aging retirement communities?
We work with some of them, naturally occurring retirement communities. We're working with a bunch of them sort of in ancillary fashion. So for example, we've built a lot of labs. You know, one of the things that we found when we started working, I interviewed all these senior center directors, and they said, well, we've got seniors, but we do need new computer equipment. And so when we worked with the BTOP program from the federal government, we built 23 free computer labs for partner sites around the city. And Department for the Aging helped us pick those and target them in communities where they were needed. But we've also worked with the Macquarie Group Foundation, which is it's an Australian financial services group that's kind of adopted us as their innovation standard, nonprofit around these issues. They have built, I think they're up to, they may be on their 8th lab now. They come in with their own technology team, and with our specifications at the sites that we identify, they build those labs out. And we just built one, I think we did one at Penn South. We've been doing them around the city, and several of those have been in NORCs. And so they're increasing the capacity. And then we go out there and do the trainings at those sites.
So you consider yourself a social entrepreneur, because you've also worked in the private sector.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you find this sector more rewarding, or what?
Oh, it's a blast. No, I worked in advertising for a couple of years as a brand strategist. Back in the late 90s when I was in graduate school, got a phone call from a friend who was working in an ad agency and said, we're just looking for people who have a brain, and you qualify. And I went in, and before I knew it, I was a brand strategist for Capgemini Ernst & Young, which was our client then. And I was flying to Munich and Paris and London, doing meetings and helping them with communication strategy.
Making a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. I paid all my graduate school loans. I graduated with no debt because of that job. Yeah. And my boss said, you can even work on your dissertation while you're here. I just need you focused, during the hours of the week that we need you here. I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot about how to work in the private sector and what the expectations are and the standards of quality. But then when I graduated, I really wanted to work back in the nonprofit environment. And My strength is creativity and innovation. That's just one of the things that when I wake up in the morning, I'm usually trying to think of what the next cool idea is that I have. And I've always got a little basket of them. And so I was looking for some kind of way to apply that work. And there is this whole new field of social entrepreneurship that's been emerging. Right. And when I graduated and started teaching, Columbia offered me a position in the urban studies department there as an adjunct, and that course turned into a course on social entrepreneurship. And I've been teaching that for 12 years.
Oh, that's great. So let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
The group of older adults is increasing daily, right?
That's right.
Because all the baby boomers are aging. It's all with a new attitude, as you say.
Yeah.
And you have really brought all of this entrepreneurship to that group. And we're going to see, it's a revolution because we are seeing such different older people.
Yep, that's right.
And is the older group is the largest growing group?
It's the fastest growing group in demographic in New York, and I think in America.
In America. So it's become a very important group for not only products to sell, but also for politics. We know that that's a very reliable electorate.
That's right. The numbers I've seen are well, first of all, on the purchasing power of people over the age of 60, the numbers are staggering. They have much more wealth and much more purchasing power than the younger cohort of the same age range.
And we also have, unfortunately, a lot of poverty.
There's a lot of poverty. So it's the extremes that you see. And so seniors, 70% of the people that we work with are lower income. We don't test for income for people who come in. So we have people right across the income range, which I love because you'll get somebody really like these very Tony Upper East Side residents coming in. And it's wonderful to
connect them with other people, because it broadens everybody's horizons.
We say technology doesn't discriminate.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And so everybody who's older has that same set of issues. And it's wonderful to see people really making those connections across the racial and the ethnic and the geographic and income spectrum. And they really do. We had a funny story recently.
We don't have time for stories.
Are we running out of story?
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyways, that's been really happening. It's really making a big difference.
So people should come to West 25th Street.
That's right.
And they should connect themselves to planet.org.
Yep, seniorplanet.org.
Senior Planet.
The best way to connect is seniorplanet.org is a great place to start if you're on the internet. You can sign up for all sorts of, the email and get information, or you can just come right down to 127 West 25th Street. Walk right in. We're open from 9 to 4 every day. All the classes are free. Just be 60 and be ready to come in, aging with attitude and looking to make a difference.
Well, thank you, Tom Kamber, for doing this and for opening all these new horizons for people.
Thank you. We're having a great time at it. I appreciate it.
Great. Is there any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore? Please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.